mindset. Ay, back with a vengeance, back on the grinds, back to the business. Ay, God is my witness, they watching my moves like shows, they binging. Ay, best keep distance, all of my haters send best of wishes. I get to the bag with the quickness, no I don't need no assistance. Oh, yeah, no playing it safe. I said let's get it, you say not today. What can I say? You ain't gon' go for it, get out the way. Yeah, got no time to waste. Can't be with me if you're not at my pace. You're not at my level, you're not in my race. One foot on the gas, I'm pushing the brakes. Dancing with the devil, there's no recital. I'm killing competition, ain't no revival. I shoot it to kill it, I'm aiming for vitals. I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Yeah, I gotta get it. Get it, don't mindset. I gotta get it, don't mindset. I gotta get it, don't mindset.
Just a week ago, the iRacing IndyCar series got underway for the second time in 2022. It was an interesting race, but by no means did it compare to the fireworks that were on display this past weekend when the NTT IndyCar Series visited the Lone Star State. Today, though, we head to the Peach State and to the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Not traditionally where you'll see open-wheel cars competing on a regular basis. However, throw an IndyCar around the 2.5 miles here in Braselton, Georgia, and you will have some fun, and some fantastic racing will be on the cars. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV on a Monday evening, where it's the first race of the iRacing week, and alongside Andrew Kinsella, my name is Arjuna Kankipati. Delighted to be here for what is bound to be a fun race with strategy games played across of the 49 laps. Because, Andrew, compared to the last time we went road racing in Season 1 of this championship, we've got some rule changes, we've got some tire implications with that, we've got fuel games to be played as well. 49 laps here, with a fuel window anywhere from 21 to 22 laps. You can't extend it to make it on one stop. The question will be, when do you use the red tires? When do you use the black tires? You now have to use them both.
Yeah, that's the big change coming into today, Arjuna, is the forced usage of both tires. Just like in the real world IndyCar series, we now have that on iRacing. So it's going to throw a strategy wrench into things for a lot of these teams, a lot of these drivers who are used to having to just really practice on one set of tires. Now you really have to get good at both tires, because the tires do have some different characteristics from red to black, and so there's going to be I think a number of different choices that these drivers are going to have to make. It's going to create some different pit windows, different options for these drivers, so very interesting to see how they handle this today.
Well, a week ago, it was Alexis Newsom with her new team at Team i5G taking the victory with her teammate Christopher Demeritte in close pursuit. Wonderful drive from David Porcelli to work himself up into the top 3. This is how the championship stands, but again, it's a 12-week championship. The best 8 of your scores will count. It's a long road to go to dethrone Adam Blocker once more. Let's talk more, though, about the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. No, it's not in Long Point, Pennsylvania. Instead, it is about an hour's drive northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. It's a fascinating racetrack with plenty of elevation change, recently updated as well here on iRacing, and the thing that really stands out to me as the major change, Andrew, is the curbing, and therefore how you can use the curbing. Turn 3, you've got to be careful. Turn 5, you've got to be careful. And the chicane, that's where you'll make the most of it. You'll throw it in at that very end of that almost 1 mile straight that leads you into that final section of corners. It's a fun track. It's a short track. It's fast, and the laps tick away quickly. 49 laps here. Well, we're going racing for less than an hour.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those classic American circuits where you get all those different sort of connected corners together. You don't really get the sort of more modern feel with the Tilka tracks, with the 90-degree corners. This is corners with a purpose, is what I like to describe it as. You really feel like you're going somewhere, and again, as you mentioned, the curbing here, now that we have that updated, it's just opened up that last chicane, that 10A, 10B complex, to really allow some passing opportunities. So I'm very excited to see what kind of action we have in store for us tonight.
Qualifying still has about 2.5 minutes left on the clock, but all but a couple of drivers seem to already have called it quits for qualifying. So we'll quickly run you through how the provisional qualifying standings are looking, but it looks like this might be final. Trainer almost a quarter of a second clear of Adam Blocker. Connor Harrington will sit inside row 2 with Wilson Nadeau returning to a Monday night after commentating on this series alongside myself midway through 2021. Jacob Oster's here. Mitchell Welker is here as well. Adam Crane's down in 8th. Another of our RaceSpot Brazilian colleagues, Lorenzo Bonder, sits in 9th. There's a big swing, though. The 22 cars that have put lap times on the board here, Andrew, split by just about 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, there's definitely a very big gap between the first and the last cars here. But one name that stuck out to me that is sort of down where he maybe we wouldn't expect him to be, Alex Van de Sant, down in 13th place, Arjuna. That's definitely not what the power slide driver had in mind here, especially with his teammates P2 and P4 right now.
One thing to note is he did use both of his lap times. It's fairly easy to invalidate a lap time here, get one of those dreaded 1x incident points, cut the chicane, or rather the curb at turn 3 a little bit too much, cut the chicane, even running wide at turn 7 where that's that crucial more than 90-degree corner where you try and get the momentum and the power down onto that back straightaway. So maybe some drivers had an issue there, but for Van der Sant, maybe it's just not finding the balance in qualifying. And one thing that we can talk about very quickly is it was somewhat conflicted drivers coming into this race. The red tires, the alternate tires, which are a little bit softer, have a little bit more grip, but wear a little bit faster, versus the primary black tires. Because it's relatively clear, you can see it's 35 degrees Celsius on the track itself. We'll likely see the red tires be the primary choice of tires. And going back to what we were saying earlier, where you have to use both compounds, you don't have to start on the tire that you qualified on. That is also crucial.
Yeah, that really opens up the strategy a lot. So it actually has two effects. One, it allows all these drivers to qualify on the best compound and with their fastest time. But two, it definitely, as you say, opens up that strategy and just allows a little bit more variety. And I think what we'll see is definitely drivers maybe going to the reds and doing a shorter stint to begin, and then trying to get a longer stint on the blacks. could also see it the other way around, where you finish on the blacks once you let the tires and the track really rubber in. And I find personally that the rubber at the end of the race really brings to life the black tires, so I think that's definitely one thing that they might consider.
Not major changes to the car, but major changes to the strategy itself. What will we see in store for us today? You'll have to find out. 49 laps on the board here at the Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Let's dive down in the Peach State to take a look at our starting grid. Brandon Traino on pole position with a 1:03.659. That is blistering, and about 4 seconds faster than the lap record here set in one of those mythical LMP1 cars almost 14 years ago. That was a Peugeot 908 with Christian Klein behind the wheel there. Gives you an indication of just how frenetic the lap is going to be here. Adam Blocker to his outside, a quarter of a second off the pace. The two drivers that came to blows last time out at the Texas Motor Speedway, while Connor Harrington and Wilson Nadeau line up alongside each other on row number 2. Jacob Oster and Rashad Craig, 5th and 6th positions, while Mitchell Welker and Adam Crane 7th and 8th, with the top 8 split by 1 full second. Lorenzo Bonder and David Porcelli round out the top 10, with Porcelli aiming to build off his 3rd place finish a week ago. Isaac Snyder and David Trask 11th and 12th positions. Alexander Van der Sant rolls from 13th, with Timothy Reed alongside him on row 7. Justin Gable shares row 8 with Alessandro Sidi, Trevor Greenfield and David Henger 17th and 18th positions. Final cars to set qualifying lap times. Brian Spots, BC Voigt, Chris Wilhite and David Graybill, while Richard Holt, Antonio Newcris, as well as... That's it, excuse me, thought we had an extra car there, but no, we don't. It's 24 that are ready to roll here. In terms of passing opportunities, how do we think this will play out? We've got a full pace lap to be talking through these possibilities. Using the push to pass out of turn 7, I think, is a primary one. You might also see some brave souls try and get something done into turn number 1.
Yeah, turn 1, I would call it at best a half opportunity. It basically requires the car in front to have made a fairly significant error through the last sort of sequence of corners at 11-12 complex to really make it a good place to make a pass. I think that, yeah, the best place is into that turn 10 area, coming off, making sure you get a good run out of turn 7. Turn 7, I think, is probably the most important corner on the track, because you just have to nail it in order to make sure that you're either able to pass someone or defend it. And then into that chicane, that turn 10A, 10B complex, that's where we're going to see most of the passing.
I mentioned it last week, I'll mention it again, just because it makes me feel better, inflates my ego just that little bit more. But a while ago, it feels like an age ago now if we're being completely honest, Adam Blocker and myself had a fun fight here in an IndyCar Open Series race. It came down to the last lap. The traffic played a factor, and carving through that traffic, Adam Blocker and myself went side by side on the final lap into that chicane. There was a little bit of contact with netcode assistance there. I came out on top. I mentioned that just because, again, I want to inflate my ego. But my point really being is, if you save your tires and you plan this out correctly, Andrew, we may honestly see Traino, Blocker, Harrington maybe even fighting all the way to the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a track where, especially with the push to pass, with the drafting as it is, I think that we're going to see some very close racing at the front of this field. We have some very talented drivers as well. I wouldn't count out Wilson Nadeau either. Rashad Craig has shown speed as well, and the ability, especially with the draft, to stay with drivers like Blocker and Traino in the past. So I wouldn't put us past even having a battle for this top 5, top 6 come the end of this race.
Prediction time. I'll go first, Andrew, so I don't put the pressure on you. I think I'm going to go with Blocker. After what happened last week, I think he's eager to make amends. What about you?
I think that there is the definite possibility of seeing some calamity on this start, so I'm going to go a little off the board here and say Jacob Oster.
Okay, so from 5th to 1st for the i5G22 machine, but 49 laps, 2 pit stops guaranteed, and drivers are required to use both compound of tires. Brandon Traino in control of the field and holding us through the last corner down the hill. Green flag flies. We're racing at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Blocker immediately under pressure from Connor Harrington, who looks to the inside and slots himself up into second. Up the hill we work in towards turn number 3. Do you want to go side by side through here? Adam Crane decides he wants to get past Mitchell Welker. Looks like Alexander Van der Sant spun it on the curb on turn 3. Everyone else survives. We're clean here to kick off this race.
It goes from bad to worse for Alexander Van der Sant, Arjuna. His poor starting position just compounded. Now he's dead last after that start, barring the people who started from pit road. I think that was Brian Spots who did. So 23rd place for Alexander Van der Sant after lap 1, not the way he wanted to start this race.
A couple of side-by-side battles coming out of turn 7 as well. That really does check up your momentum. You don't really want to be there. Down the hill into turn 10 they come. No real push-to-pass usage from what I can tell. Blocker's been shuffled back to 4th as Mitchell Welker now alongside with Wilson Nadeau. But leading lap number 1, Brandon Traino leads here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Connor Harrington, Jacob Oster, Adam Blocker, and Adam Crane, the top 5.
Yeah, really nice start to this race. We do still have some battling back in the field, though. That looks like, who's that? That's Mitchell Welker, Wilson Nadeau, and Lorenzo Bonder going at it here.
Now, it's important to understand why these power slide cars are struggling, and it's because of their choice of tire compound. Blocker and Nadeau, the only cars inside the top 5 to go onto the blacks. Couple of cars running wide at turn 5, but they hold on to that, can run wide and carry the momentum. It's going to come to them maybe only lap 15 or so. The disadvantage that they have at the start, though, Andrew, is going to be borne out with an advantage in those final 2 stints of the race.
Yeah, so it's going to be hard for them to stay up, particularly on these first few laps, Arjuna. This is where the black tires really suffer, is at the beginning of this race, as we see Mitchell Welker nearly taking a look at going 2 for 1 on Adam Blocker, with Adam Crane completing the pass down the back straightaway there. So they've probably got maybe another 3 laps, I would say, to really get these tires sort of back into that operating window, and they're just going to watch their competitors prance away right now. But as you say, that's all going to come back to them towards the end of this race. So just because they're going in one direction now doesn't mean that they're not going to go in a different direction very soon in this race.
You likely go full in terms of running the car dry at the early portion of this race, given that you start on the blacks. You then split the end of this race into shorter stints. So that's something to keep your eye on as well. Through turn 7, Adam Crane is already about 2.5 seconds back from Jacob Oster, so that's the disadvantage of starting behind cars that are on that slower compound of tire. Does Mitchell Welker get on the button? No, he doesn't. He'll stay in the draft and look to the inside as they come down the hill. Gravity works against you, but you avoid locking the brakes. You get that car tucked in nicely, and Adam Blocker now gets demoted to 6th position as Welker cycles his way on forward. Let's go ahead then and pick up what happened at the very start of this race as Brandon Traino responds to Connor Harrington putting in the fastest lap last time around. He goes fastest this time. Let's see if we can figure out what happened to the one and only Alexander Van der Sant. So, oh, it's not just on the curb, he's gone on the grass as well and gets it locked down in time. Doesn't slide that into the tire barriers, but it's another mistake from Alexander Van der Sant.
Yeah, just an unfortunate, unforced error there. Really wasn't very much pressure from the outside. They seem to be actually behaving themselves really well, but he just went way too much up on that curb. Big bump on the inside of turn 3, as we've mentioned, and around he went.
Some fighting going on a little further back. You saw Bonder, for example, on the button as they almost fanned themselves out 3 wide. Trask puts the pressure on Bonder, who forces the issue on Wilson Nadeau. Power slide duo really going backwards. In your opinion, Andrew, I mean, we'll avoid the power slide bias, but starting on the black tires, yes, it gives you the advantage late, but we're seeing why it's painful, and the further you slide back in the early stages, it becomes very difficult to work your way forward.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a catch-22 for me, Arjuna. So the one advantage that they have of starting on the blacks is that there is a substantial amount of draft that they can sort of try to exploit and stay with the leaders as much as possible, whereas there will be less draft towards the end of the race. But that being said, it's really, really painful to keep on getting past. So if Blocker loses another position to Lorenzo Bonder here, that's going to be a major, major obstacle for him to overcome as he has to claw his way back up through the field. So there's definitely pros and cons of both strategies, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure which strategy is going to play out the best in the long run here.
Trask will use his push to pass once more as he'll look to get past Wilson Nadeau. Back and backslide those two power slide cars. Now, something else that we want to divert your attention to happened in the early stages here. I believe it was lap 2 for Trevor Greenfield as they work their way up into turn 1. Oh, it just overcooks the entry. Yep, no, he's going to run off wide. Now, Road Atlanta doesn't play host to any rallycross action, but that's pretty good car control from Greenfield to slot it in. Oh, that was close on the rejoin, but I guess they made it work out, and all's fair in love and war. It's a close little moment there, but it's so easy to do given the commitment that you have into turn 1.
Yeah, and it looked like Greenfield was trying to defend the inside a little bit, and I think as he was doing it, he just lost a little bit of where he was on the track, and I think the corner came up on him just a little bit sooner than he was expecting, and then just too much speed, and a combination of too much speed and too shallow a line, and off the track he went.
A reminder, if you're just tuning in, the strategy game is already starting to play itself out. 49 laps divides into 2 pit stops with a 21-22 lap fuel window. You have to use both the alternate compound and the primary compound. Given that it's relatively cool, you do expect the alternate tire to be the preferred choice over the course of the race, but Adam Blocker, Wilson Nadeau, both elected to start on the primary compound. Take the pain now. They've slid back now to the tune of 7+ seconds. Adam Blocker now sits behind Brandon Traynor. 2 cars have broken away at the front. Connor Harrington keeping Brandon Traynor nice and honest right now.
Yeah, Harrington's really putting a lot of pressure on Traynor. I think probably more pressure than Traynor was really expecting at this stage of the race, given how far back Adam Blocker has fallen on those tires. But Harrington, as you say, he's right on the pace, and then look at Traynor. He's already burning a push to pass to maybe try and gap Harrington just that little bit after Harrington made a small mistake coming out of turn 7 there.
They both use one of their 10 allotments of the push to pass. Slightly different to how it is in the real world and the NTT IndyCar series. There it's a per second allotment. Here it's a per usage allotment. 10 extra spurts of 60 to 70 horsepower. You'll likely only really see it though coming out of turn 7. If you get a good run, it can propel you down the almost 1.4 kilometer run that leads you into the chicane. On board with Harrington, you saw a bit of a wiggle coming through the final sections of corners, but look at this commitment down the hill through the S's. Look how careful you have to be on the curbs as well. Not much curb usage there from Harrington. Brandon Traynor, in comparison, much more willing to roll that car out wide. That gap built up to now 1 full second.
Yeah, and that's all down to just how compliant the different setups are. I think probably Brandon Traynor is just a little bit more comfortable over the bumps at this stage than Connor Harrington is. Harrington seems to be trying to keep it a little bit more in between the lines, whereas Traynor has been all over the bumps in a number of different locations that I've seen so far.
Lorenzo Bonder starts to feel the pressure as they work themselves snaking down into turn 10. David Porcelli, Davis Trask, Wilson Nadeau all there. Adam Crane has just been passed by Mitchell Welker as well, but Lorenzo Bonder loses 1, and his countryman Wilson Nadeau wants to try and make it 2, but he'll run wide and open the door for Porcelli to slide on through. Some great fighting up and down through the field. Those black primary tires, though, starting to work itself into the race as Blocker now really on the coattails of Adam Crane and Mitchell Welker.
I was just about to say we need to mark off on our timing screens. Lap 8, lap 9, that's the area where the crossover starts to happen, and you can see that Adam Blocker's really starting to pick up the pace. The lap times have stabilized, and Adam Crane is under an immense amount of pressure from behind, but he's giving it just as good as he can to Mitchell Welker in front of him as well.
We know Mitchell is a great road course driver, getting quicker and quicker on the ovals as well in collaboration with the AAIR team. I think I got that one correctly. Into That long run, which is not a straight in the regular sense, neither vertically or horizontally. It's got some kinks in it. It's got some elevation changes as well. Looks like Crane might have burnt through his tires a little bit too much. Here comes Rashad Craig on the inside of Wilson Nadeau, who now drops outside of the top 10. Hindsight is everything, but I'm starting to wonder if you're the Powerslide team, maybe you're regretting that call as Wilson Nadeau makes an early decision to come down to pit lane to get rid of those black compound tires. We thought that maybe you'd want to run these all the way to the end, and that's why I say maybe regretting that choice.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of an interesting one, Arjuna, because the driver who just passed him, Rashad Craig, he's also on primary tires, so I think it just could be the case that the Powerslide setup just isn't very happy with the primary tires, not as happy certainly as some of these other competitors. That being said though, Adam Blocker, he's definitely a driver that I would look to see him stretch out this stint as long as he can, simply because the gap and the tire fall off has stabilized for him. I think it's just Nadeau hasn't driven on road courses in this car very much, and it's just one of those things where I think he just wasn't comfortable enough on those tires, and sometimes comfort is more important in terms of overall pace than the actual data.
Lorenzo Bonder gives up the spot to David Porcelli. Bit of history here about the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. First opened in 1970, that's 52 years ago. The intention was to build a world-class racing facility. However, even though it hosted IMSA races, Trans Am, SCCA, all of those kinds of series, it wasn't until 1996 when Don Panos purchased the track that things really started to take off. The intention for Dr. Don was to build this into a small taste of Le Mans. He inaugurated it with the race Petit Le Mans, and 20-something odd years later, the population of this town swells to upwards of 100,000 people in a true celebration of endurance racing. It's the end of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. It also marks the end of the Endurance Cup within that championship. And it is a fantastic race, racing into the darkness. There's always drama, there's always chaos. And a little bit of drama here as Bonder continues to slide backwards, maybe has burned through those tires. Remember, he's on the red alternate tires, Rashad Craig on the black primary tires. Looks nice and easy as it looks like Mitchell Welker maybe down to pit road this time by.
Yeah, really nice move there from Lorenzo Bonder, and that was not Mitchell Welker, that was Davis Trask that is down on pit road this time by, and I believe he was also on the primary tires if I'm not mistaken, so that is another primary shot driver trying to get off as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, we do see on screen right now Mitchell Welker, Adam Crane, and Adam Blocker. This fighting has not subsided in the slightest. If anything, Adam Blocker is right on the back of Adam Crane coming out of that corner there. Let's see if we can see a move coming down this straightaway here.
They didn't get the best run off of the corner though as they work themselves through. Isaac Snyder's not just run wide at turn 7, he's smacked himself to the inside wall. We'll grab a replay of what happened there for the RSR by butt kicker driver, but down the hill Welker holds on. It's an easy place to make a mistake, is the exit of turn 7. Blocker looked like he got a great run off the exit of that chicane, and down the hill might even have the door open to slide to the inside. Turn 1's a bold place to make a pass happen given the commitment, and Crane will slot his way back into line, sweep that momentum through. No changes just yet. Blocker now 12 seconds almost off of your leader, Brandon Traynor.
You can tell that those tires are really coming in for Adam Blocker now, Arjuna. He is all over the back of Adam Crane. Crane's tires are starting to go off now. He had just enough to be able to hold on through turn 1 there, but I think a couple more laps and that move is definitely on. Oh no, that's Lorenzo Bonder.
He said he was going to die, and maybe that was just the self-curve. Was there contact there between Blocker and Crane? We jumped back to them as Adam Blocker was straddling the curb through turn 7. He might have just gotten away with that one.
Yeah, with the tires going away, one of the things that goes away the first is your apex speed and then your exit speed. So I think it's just the case of Adam Crane with the tires going away on him. He is just not able to keep the speed up through the corners. Adam Blocker with the nice hot red, nice hot black primary tires. They are working perfectly well for him, and he's just able to keep up that mid-corner speed better than Adam Crane is at this point.
I make that mistake all the time. Reds versus blacks. it's much more difficult than I think people realize to keep that straight. So coming through turn 7, he's not on the grass, which you often see occur, but maybe it's just on that power down, that critical phase of the corner where things go wrong. You can just hear the tires slip from underneath him, and that's the right front suspension significantly damaged. He rips away portions of the front wing as well. Almost happened there to Adam Crane, who was really slow. You talked about the apex speed dropping. That's clearly what's happening for Adam Crane.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that the tires, particularly the front tires, tend to go away first, so you just get this boatload of understeer in the middle of the corner, and it forces you to scrub away all of your apex speed, and so that's what Crane is going through in the cars. He's just doing whatever he can to find a way around the track quickly. But meanwhile, we have Connor Harrington down pit road. That is your second place runner right now.
Trying to get the undercut working on Brandon Traino. Traino had been able to break away very slightly, so I'm not entirely shocked to see that. Crane a little bit slow through turn 1, bit by bit dropping back from Mitchell Welker, and Adam Blocker surely is going to start getting a little bit impatient, but that's where the best realize that patience is the name of the game. Let's pick up what happened to Lorenzo Bonder as Traino responds by getting on the button. So over the crest of the hill, loses it on the inside curb, which you do want to use that curb to try and help rotate the car, but it's very easy at the same time to make that mistake and have it over-rotate, and it snaps around on the Brazilian.
Yeah, and I think with Lorenzo too, I don't think his car was necessarily the happiest car in the field, particularly as the tires started to wear off. He seemed to lose a lot of the pace that he had at the beginning of the race. It seemed like the rear of his car in a number of different locations, even before that incident, was really not looking happy. So it doesn't surprise me that he lost the back end in the way he did. But Adam Crane down on pit road here.
Yeah, I think he really realized he was costing himself time, let alone Adam Blocker. Brandon Traino also coming down to pit this most recent time by Jacob Oster boxed as well. So there's Traino up on the jacks, getting his tires onto that car. Now getting a full top off of fuel. Where is Connor Harrington? There's Harrington through the final corner, and Traino is going to set sail to the draft of Alexander Van der Sant. The difference between them is about 5 seconds. Connor Harrington, I think, topped that car up all the way to the brim because it was a 10.4 second pit stop for him, compared to an 8.6 second stop for Brandon Traino.
And one of the things, Jacob Oster around.
On cold tires, the 22 has looped it, and that's into the wall, and he's towed straight back to pit lane. A crucial mistake. It's so easy to do coming out of pit lane when the tires are cold. He was on the red mark alternates, though, I do believe. It's typically become a little bit easier to get up to speed. So that's an interesting thing to see. Wilson Nato and Crane both having made their pit stops. Nato switched over to those red mark alternate tires and slots himself past the Canadian.
So before Oster lost that, I wanted to talk about the strategy just a little bit more, Arjuna, because it's very interesting that these red marked tire drivers who started the race on the red marked tires, they went about 15 laps, 16 laps on the outside. Oh no!
Crane and Nato side by side, and Nato fought that one hard. Crane defended that one extremely hard as well. And ultimately, it is Adam Crane that pays the biggest price. Looks like Wilson Nato might have lost the front end of his car. Take a look at Adam Blocker, though, at least for now, on the button and trying to get past Mitchell Welker, knowing that the more laps he spends behind that number 7 car, the more time he's going to lose. He's got his mirrors also filled with David Porcelli. The first time that Blocker has gotten on the button down the inside, Welker's not fighting it too hard. Adam Blocker retakes the race lead, but surely he's down onto pit road. If not this lap, maybe the next time around. Let's grab some replays, and let's start with what happened to Jacob Oster. And he's coming out in front of traffic. I think that puts the pressure on him. He's trying to get the power down nice and early so that he's not causing any issues for that car behind. He just loops it by himself.
It's the same thing that we saw with Alexander Van der Sant on the start, Arjuna. He was too far to the inside, hits the bump on the apex just on the other side of the curb there, and loops it around. Unfortunately, unlike Van der Sant, he put it into the wall, and that'll be major impact for Jacob Oster and probably day done. But going back up front here with Adam Blocker, one thing you said to expect him in the next 2 laps, I don't think so. I think he's going to try and go 20-21 if he can, because he's got to use up as much time on these black tires as he can. going back to what I was saying with the strategy, 15 or 16 laps on the red tires. So that puts them at lap 30 to 32. So that means that the last stint for most of these drivers on the black tires is going to be in the 20 lap area. So that means that if Adam Blocker gets onto the reds this time through, which he probably will, that means he's got much shorter red stints going forward here, and he should be able to gain back a whole bunch of time here.
Let's illustrate, though, the damage this has done to Blocker. David Porcelli started down in 10th spot, Blocker on the outside of row 1. They are basically sharing the same piece of the track right now. That is not the way that I think Blocker would have wanted the strategy to go, but strategy plays itself out the way it will. Crane, by the way, after this incident, has had to take a visit down to pit lane. We'll have to grab a couple more looks at this one, but first indications were, I mean, Crane has defended hard and then tried to squeeze NATO back to the outside line. And is there enough overlap? I don't know, but the thing that we always like to try and give in sim racing is racing room, and unfortunately wasn't enough space for Wilson NATO there.
Yeah, I think this kind of started with that sort of aggressive defense to the inside, and when that happens to you on a straight like it is here, where it's not really a straight, and the normal line is sort of to stay to the outside there. When that happens, I can tell you that it makes you much less likely to back out from the second half of that move with Wilson NATO. So, to be honest, that's just hard racing, and it just happens at times. Oh, there's another car off at turn 3 there, Arjuna.
I believe it's Brian Spots or maybe David Graybill. But yeah, no, you're right. And I think the other thing, right, is you give as good as you get. Like if someone's going to block you aggressively, you're going to return serve, as they would say in tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where if you want room, if you want to be given room, then you better be willing to give room as well.
Now, Powerslide and Crane have had their own saga, as Jason Brophy put it, between them. It's just another chapter to be told in that tale. Traino, by the way, is only 12 seconds back from Blocker. Let's look at what happened to Spots, and it's deja vu. It's the third car that's made that same mistake, but just like Van der Sant earlier, he was able to hang on to that one. Would have been a nervous moment, though, if you're Adam Blocker.
Yeah, Adam Blocker, David Porcelli, they were hoping that Spots didn't come back into the racing lane there, but this is not what Blocker wanted, having cars exiting right in front of him. He's got traffic. I'm guessing this is going to be his in-lap, Arjuna, so having this traffic to deal with, this is exactly what he didn't want to see here.
Blocker's a good fuel saver, and he told me 22 laps. Wilson NATO said, I can do 22 laps. I just lose so much time that I have to do 21. Again, they had a full pace lap here around the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, so you think I'm in agreement with you that this is going to be the in-lap, and that is the Isaac Snyder 12 car. I may have checked him up very slightly, but to give you the lap time delta between Blocker and Traino, it's a 105.6 last time by for Traino, who's 5 laps now into his stint on those red mark alternate tires. Blocker did a 106.1, and I tell you what, this is also not optimal. David Porcelli takes away the lead with a pass down into the chicane. Likely going to see them both come in. Porcelli's the only one that comes in. Interesting from Blocker, given how much time he's already lost. But I guess once he saw that 3 car pulling off onto pit lane, he realized he didn't want to try and lose more time following him in.
Particularly interesting that he would make that move on his in-lap and cost them both a little bit of time there. I'm not quite sure why Porcelli would make that move, other than maybe it's just that Adam Blocker has been fuel saving so much that he lifted off into that turn 10 there, and he just basically forced Porcelli to go up the inside of him. That's the only explanation I can think of trying to make that move, that like 2 corners from your pit in.
Porcelli again coming off the back of that wonderful drive last time out. We're riding on board with Brandon Trainer. Let's get that onboard look with him once more. You can see focus, steering angle more than 90 degrees, because it's not a 90-degree corner there, it is more than 90 degrees, and once you understand that, it changes the way that you'll approach that corner. The one thing that I wanted to ask you though, Andrew, is I know you like to race in virtual reality. Clearly Brandon Traino does not, and we don't really see it too much as well at the World Championship level here on iRacing. So from your perspective, what are the main benefits that you get, especially on ovals, I guess, from racing in VR?
Yeah, so for me, for VR, there are two main advantages. The first of all is just your spatial awareness. Especially, I came from a single monitor. Triples, you don't have as much of a transition, but you still get just so much more spatial awareness of the cars around you. You can get that much closer to the cars going side by side on an oval track. And then more on the road side of things, just the ability to see your apex and to really look and have that more natural sort of head movement. I just find that it benefits me. I don't know that I'm necessarily faster with it, but what I am is able to get into a more consistent rhythm. And for me, because I'm not necessarily going into that upper
the
tier.
hill.
Oh no! Oh,
that's on the
big
entry to
incident
turn
on the
3, and
rejoin.
I think another car got involved with that. And yeah,
yes, there was.
That is Richard Holt, I do believe. Alessandro Sidi, that 21 car, was the instigator there. Kind of similar to what we saw from Trevor Greenfield earlier, where I think he might have got very wide on the entry into turn number 1, and it snowballs from there. We'll have to grab a couple of looks at that one, and let's not dawdle. Let's go straight to the replay machine to pick up this one. So through turn 1, CD, yes indeed, pushes himself out wide, and once you're in the grass, it becomes very difficult to do much about that. He knocks down the wall, and Richard Holt, minding his P's and Q's, can do nothing but have that car come across into him.
Yeah, just so unfortunate for Richard Holt. Yeah, just small mistake from CD, and it just sort of all compounded, and oh, what an impact. And there's just nothing you can do because you're just coming over basically the crest of a hill there, and it's half blind, and there's basically nowhere else to put the car. But Arjuna, Adam Blocker said he could go 22 laps. It's been much more than 22 laps at this point.
Yeah, that's remarkable, as Brian Spots has lost it on turn 7, so that's now the second victim. But here he comes. Blocker is finally in. Now the benefit that he'll have is he'll be able to put less fuel in the car for the next couple of stints of the race. Is there any way he can do this on a one-stop?
It would be really difficult, but it does look like he might be trying it, doesn't it, Arjuna? It'll be 24 laps to go from here, and he just did a 24-lap stint. So,
but the other thing to remember is he's going to have to do it on the red compound tires. Now let's quickly, as we see Blocker up on the jacks, it has gone up very slightly in the track temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. I still think this is a bold call. So let's go best case scenarios. Porcelli will emerge in front of Adam Blocker. Let's go best case scenario, right? It's about a 30-second delta in pit lane. He's got to avoid losing 10 more seconds. He lost 19 in the first stint of the race.
Yeah, and that'll be the key, right, is if he can actually stay in front of Brandon Trano, because I don't know that he'll be able to maintain the pace he was, because the one thing that he had in that first stint that he won't really have this stint is the draft, and the draft makes a huge difference in terms of fuel saving numbers. So I think that probably it'd be just too big of an ask for Blocker to be able to actually do another 24 lap stint here. So I think probably what you're going to see here is actually two 12 lap stints, splitting this final red stint in half, and basically using low fuel to really put in some torrid times. But
so you say that, but it was a 10.5-second pit stop, which indicates to me a full tank of fuel.
That's very true. So yeah, he might be trying to make it. I don't know. I wouldn't do it, but it's Adam Blocker. You never know what he can pull off, and he's pulled off some miracle fuel saves in the past, so he very well could be trying this.
One thing to note when it came to the prior fuel-saving games is Blocker tended, past tense, to be a good fuel saver because he was right foot braking. Now though, he's got a hydraulic set of pedals, he's switched over to left foot braking. Wasn't that big of a transition for him, which I do find interesting. But again, the fact that it was a transition is something to think about as well. But when you're left foot braking, it's a little bit more tempting to go a bit more aggressive, and we might need to get a couple of laps on board with him at some point to try and hear what he's doing from that engine noise and that tone of the engine as well.
Well, and I did say that he won't have draft help this stint, but that being said, he did come out right behind David Porcelli here, and Porcelli is on roughly the same strategy as he is. He did pit, I think, 5 laps sooner, but he did start on the black, so Blocker might actually have draft for a significantly longer portion of this stint than I thought he would.
gap has actually come down very slightly. I think Brandon Traino might have made a mistake. Brandon Traino might have made a mistake and gets on the button to try and recoup that time. He's already burned through half of his push-to-passes, and that's the other thing to know. We know Blocker is a little bit more reticent to use the push-to-pass, partially because he likes saving them for when he needs them, but now he might not have the opportunity to use them because he's got to save the fuel. So we'll wait and see. There's plenty of intrigue about the strategy games. Let's take a look at what happened to Brian Spots, though. Rounding himself through turn 7, runs out wide, and he's the one that's the first to dip his left side tires into the grass. From there, you've got no traction. You're always going to go one way, and that way is into the wall.
Yep. The outside lane there just has so little traction once you get onto that rumble strip, and then it almost throws you onto the other side of it, and then as soon as his tires hit that grass and that dirt on the other side, it just spun him right around. So definitely an unfortunate end to Brian Spott's day there.
I've got that song stuck in my head right now. You spin me right round. Da, 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 da. We'll get away from that because we don't. The last time I sung on a broadcast was during the Jimmy Broadbent charity stream, and we're not doing anything for charity, at least right now. Let's take a look at something that happened to Trevor Greenfield, who's in a big pack of. This is where Traino.
So this with Traino.
Yeah, this is where he might have lost the time. Now bizarre. Need a couple more looks at that one.
So it looks like, so Traino definitely did lose some time here, but basically it looks like Trevor Greenfield got a little bit spooked, tried to get out of the way of Brandon Traino, because I don't think he realized just how much deeper Brandon Traino was going into turn 6 there. So Traino got right on the back of Greenfield. Greenfield got a little bit spooked, got a little bit too far out of the way, we'll say, and it cost Greenfield more time than Traino did, and Traino was able to get around the other lapped car as well on the back straightaway there, so he probably only lost maybe 2 or 3 tenths in that exchange there, Arjuna.
So let's listen in on this lap to Adam Blocker around the track. So a little bit of fuel saving up the hill through turn 3, that was for sure. Down into turn 5, does he do any saving here? Just listen in. Yeah, if he's saving at turn 5, there's only one thing, and that is a fuel saving strategy going on.
Yeah, if he's fuel saving a little bit, he's fuel saving as much as he can right now, because there's no point to him fuel saving a little bit here. It's either all or nothing. So we've heard some evidence of the fuel saving, so he must be making a number that somehow will allow him to make this on one stop. I did not think it was possible. He didn't think it was possible, according to what he was telling us before the start of this race. So he must have found just another gear in terms of fuel saving.
You also have to include the fact that there was a full pace lap here. And I know it's a short lap, 2.5 miles, but at a lot of tracks, for example Sebring, you only do a quarter and a bit in terms of the lap on the formation lap. So a lot more fuel that you would have burned as a result of that. So if you did 24, 25 laps in stint 1, it becomes easier to add an additional lap or do less fuel saving in this portion of the race, as Wilson Nadeau down onto pit lane.
And Wilson is the first of the drivers to get his second stop out of the way, so this is going to be a long stint for Wilson Nadeau. He got off the black tires really, really early on in this race, and I think that his tires are going to be really suffering come lap 49 of this race.
It's a 19-lap stint. Is he going to go back onto the primary compound? No, he stayed on the alternates. So an interesting call there. Traino's in as well. And remember, he's got to use that primary compound now, so that's why he's coming a bit earlier. He's used those red tires to the best of his ability. And now we'll do a long stint to the end of this race. Connor Harrington was 8 seconds back coming into this cycle. He'll cycle his way forward. David Porcelli comes in this lap. So Blocker's fuel-saving advantage potentially has gone away. It's an early stop from Porcelli, though.
Yeah, really surprised that Porcelli's in at this point. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that he did it this way. But I'm sure this has also probably surprised Blocker a fair bit, and he might be thinking, what just happened here? But crucially, Blocker is out well in front of Brandon Traino. He's been basically lapping at the same pace as Traino has been, so he's still 11 seconds in front of Traino, which is about where he came into his first stop in. So, so far at least, Blocker has been at least holding steady with Traino. and Treno is on the slower black primary tires now.
Some battling going on back in the pack as well. It's not all eyes further forward. Now this is a two-way fight for 18th position. 2 cars 1 lap down. Both cars, I believe, have had issues as well. Antonio Nuccis and Isaac Snyder have some company up the road in front of them. 24 that started, down to 15 on the lead lap. 22, though, in total. Still out there and running. Blocker is 10 seconds clear of Brandon Treno. So if he's going to win this race, he's got 18 or so laps to avoid losing 10 seconds. We'll have to wait and follow the lap times here. Blocker's last lap was a 1:06.6, which is about a second slower than the fastest lap times that we've seen from the red compound tires. But it will compare pretty nicely, I think, to those optimal lap times for the black tires.
Yeah, the crucial thing for Blocker right now is he just doesn't have anyone to draft with. So if he is going to fuel save and try and make it on this one stop, he's going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, through lift and coast and through those fuel maps. And it's going to cost him a lot more time now that he doesn't have someone to draft behind.
Down the hill, this battle rages on. See how wide they run themselves out. And I know it's a very different sort of a track. Somewhat close, but the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta is, of course, one of the 4 VCO Grand Slams that we had in 2021. It will return as a VCO Grand Slam this year as well, so coverage will be here live on RaceSpotTV in partnership with the guys at Radio Show Limited, but Sebring 12 hours this weekend. It won't be a VCO Grand Slam, so instead you have to endure the RaceSpotTV commentary team, but it's always a fun race. We went there at the end of season 1 here in the IndyCars for a great race there as well. One of the best that we've had that I can remember in recent times. So remember, if you're not already an iRacing member, head on over to iRacing.com. 40% off new memberships. Get your virtual racing career started. Get yourself on the road to the virtual checkered flag. You going to be racing at Sebring this weekend, Andrew?
I suspect that I will not have time to go in at Sebring this weekend. Planning a wedding means that weekends are not necessarily the best times for me to be on the sim, unfortunately.
Yeah, and your fiancée already has to spends enough time watching you broadcast, so I don't blame her there.
Absolutely.
She can at least recoup some of the time with you during the weekends. Of course, Lionheart is this week, I should say, as well. The HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. That will be live on RaceSpotTV, 10:05 p.m. Eastern, 7:05 p.m. Pacific. This coming Wednesday. And if you want... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and of course, the DW12 tonight for the Speedway Series.
That's what I was going to say. If you want more IndyCar action, well, don't go anywhere. In about an hour's time, we go to the legacy version of the Texas Motor Speedway, which might actually have just as close a finish as what we saw this weekend with Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin, as Connor Harrington will come down to pit road, should regain net second, or net third, depending on how you look at it, out on track. It was a classic race this weekend, though, Andrew. I mean, you know, Texas gets a lot of stick for the PJ1 that it's got up there on the upper grooves, but we saw plenty of passes around the outside. We saw Jimmy Johnson making passes around the outside. He was bold and brave in this past weekend. And then that finish at the end, lap traffic again playing its part with Scott McLaughlin. This time, though, it's Joseph Newgarden that times it to perfection and works himself to the front of the field to take the victory.
Yeah, that thing that Will Power had been pushing for years to do, which was to run that second groove in a separate session and really rubber in that upper portion of the groove, it really, really made a difference this year at Texas. So if they can do that every year, I say we should go back to Texas. I just wish that there was more people that would come out and show up, because that was a heck of a show.
Well, you've got two choices based on what happened with the repaved or the reconfigured Atlanta and the NASCAR race this weekend, which I'll give it its credit. It did what it was meant to do, right? It was meant to produce a different type of a race than I think a lot of traditional fans would want. But it produced one that if you go talk to the layman, a casual NASCAR fan, they loved it. I've heard from multiple people who said their parents messaged them and said that was the best NASCAR race they can remember watching in a long time. Now, I don't want every track to be like that, but if it serves a purpose and we have one of those, every so often, I'm not going to complain too much.
So my problem is that they changed Atlanta, which just had some of the best driving that you could have anywhere on an oval track, because like even if they repaved it and kept the configuration the same, you still had to really drive that track. The banking and the character was just so unique. If they had changed like Charlotte, and just like, because they basically made it like the width of Charlotte, but with steeper banking. So if they had just like increased the banking at Charlotte and produced this racing, I would be fine with it. But losing the character that was the old Atlanta track, that's the part that I hate.
So, give you a lap time update. Joshua Chin is already on the money. Though, I've just seen a big crash for Lorenzo Bonder. We'll grab a look at that in a second. But Blocker last time by is 106.7. Brandon Traino a 105.8. So, an almost full second advantage on those black tires for Brandon Traino. I don't think that's going to be one that Blocker's going to be able to fight too hard. The question will really be what happens after that. Can he hold on to second? Remember, it was an 8-second delta between Traino and Connor Harrington before that most recent cycle of pit stops, as Mitchell Welker is also down on towards pit lane. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happened to Mr. Bonder, our own RaceSpot, one of the two RaceSpot members in the race. Lorenzo's never going to hear the end of this one.
No, I'm never going to let Lorenzo forget that one. That was just like giving it way too much beans coming out of the pit road there. Just loses the back end of that car and then straight across the track. He is lucky that he didn't take someone else out when he did that.
It was Trevor Greenfield that was coming there. Lorenzo was not feeling optimistic coming into this one, and well, I don't think he's ever going to want to run an IndyCar race again that's broadcasted, because every single time I will bring that up. Gap now between Blocker and Traino down below 6 seconds. It's about 12 to go. Harrington's a further 8 seconds back, so it's a 13-second buffer that Harrington is going to make up. Now, maybe this was a call on the fly from Blocker, Andrew, which was, he saw that maybe a bit late that everyone else was starting on the red alternates. He then had to try and account for the difference that he was going to have because he was losing so much time being passed by those on the alternate tires, getting caught up with their maybe potentially slower pace, and then as a result, he switched to the fuel-saving strategy, trying to recover a second-place finish.
I maintain, Arjuna, that I think that the biggest thing that has harmed Blocker's shot at this one-stop strategy has been David Porcelli going in so early in the stint. If Blocker had been able to fuel save behind David Porcelli for another 5-7 laps, then we would be having a much different conversation right now, and we would probably be looking at him and Traino fighting for the win. As is, he is having to go so slowly to try and make it on fuel that it's just allowing Traino lap by lap to get closer and closer to him. So that, I think, was the turning point in Blocker's strategy. If Porcelli had stayed out, we would be having a totally different conversation.
Going back to what Lorenzo Bonder went through there, they say those who can't do teach. What does that say then about those who commentate? I'll leave that up to your imagination. Let's take a look at the lap times for these drivers. Working lap 39, so Traino has finally gone above the 106, very consistently, in those 105s, only 0.04 of a second off of that benchmark time last time by. Let's switch over to Adam Blocker, and there's where you can see that gulf in speed. It's about 0.6 consistently per lap, and I mean, even with the draft, maybe it would have been a little bit closer, but I don't think it would have been that much closer because Traino just looks like he's got a good car. It's a track as well where the setup compromise has got to be a difficult one, right, Andrew, where you need downforce through the straights, you need downforce through some of the faster turns. Sorry, you don't want downforce on the straights, but you need them through the faster turns, and you need chassis grip, the mechanical grip out of the slower turns. So having the set that compromises all three of those things must be ultimately very difficult to do. And don't forget now, you've got to test it and ensure it's optimal, or at least not too suboptimal, on 2 compounds of tires.
Yeah, it's never been more difficult to set up an Indy car right on the limit than it is right now, and having to account for the 2 different tire sets. But that's one of the things that being on a team like Powerslide or like i5G or Team Talent, having the people around you to help you make those setups and really optimize things, run laps, and find those extra 2/10, being on a team really makes that difference.
Let's walk you through the push-to-pass usage as well. I did mention that Blocker's going to have to conserve them by virtue of trying to save the fuel, and that's what's being borne out on track. 9 laps to go. Blocker still has 9 push-to-passes left. He burned through 1 to try and get past Mitchell Welker. Brandon Traino is down to 4 left in this race. That gap between Blocker and Traino now under 4 seconds. The gap back to Harrington about to be below 10 seconds as Blocker rounds himself through turn 5 and rolls himself up the hill. It would be great to now understand just how close to the number that Blocker is if he's got the ability to try and defend. It's not going to help as well when you've got a lapped car in front of you locking the tire on the run into turn 7. That's the 14 car of John Voigt, who's now, it is BC Voigt, who's now on the button to compound the misery for Blocker.
Yeah, that's really poor form, I'm going to say, from Voigt. If you make a mistake, just let the leader by. You don't have to prolong his misery. So, yeah, I'm not a fan. And he goes into the pits this time by, so really not a fan of that from Voigt.
Take a look at the track conditions. It's dropped a little bit further, now down to 33 degrees Celsius. And the reason we bring that up, Andrew, is when the track temperature is lower, you can spend more time on full throttle because you've got more grip. You burn through the fuel a little bit more. And all the while, Blocker's got to save more fuel. Brandon Traino gets closer and closer, now 2.5 odd seconds back from your leader.
You say that, but what it does allow you to do is also just push the lifting and coasting just that little bit extra. It does give you the little bit of extra grip on turn-in and allows you to carry your momentum through the corners just that little bit better as well. So a skilled driver at lifting and coasting, they won't really notice too much of a difference in terms of the fuel usage with that lower track temp.
Here comes Brandon Traino, who has target acquired through the aero screen. Gap closing bit by bit. This time to go should be 7 laps to go. Doing maths in real time, always a questionable proposition from a commentator. And talking of the aero screen very quickly, Andrew, it did a master job for Callum Ilott this past weekend when during practice Jack Harvey had a scary accident coming off the exit of turn 2. Spat some suspension parts towards Callum Ilott. It hit the aero screen, cracks the actual glass that wraps itself around the cockpit. Also then went on to hit Ilott's helmet on the top of the head, damaged the roll hoop as well. It just shows why this aero screen offers just that little bit more protection, especially on an oval, for these IndyCar drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly why they put in an aero screen rather than just a halo, is particularly on an oval where not only do the accidents happen in much closer quarters, but there's nowhere for those parts and pieces to really go but back onto the track. And we saw exactly why they had that full aero screen with that clear plastic. It's a space age material, we'll call it, because it's not really plastic, it's not really glass, it's this composite material that is basically specially used for cockpits and windscreens like this and like on fighter jets and stuff like that. So it did exactly what it was supposed to do and probably saved Callum Ilott from serious injury.
You know what this race reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of. It's very different, but Road America. What was it? Basically 14 weeks ago, the first race of 2022 Season 1, where Blocker and Trainer were fighting. The roles were reversed, and it was, again, something that was playing out through strategy because Adam Blocker made the uncharacteristic mistake of putting in a little bit too little fuel into that car and had to come and make a splash and dash in the final stage of this race. Again, it's these two out front. Very different circumstances, though.
Yeah, it definitely seems like... I don't know if Blocker just... He tries to... It seems like he was trying to get a little bit of a one-over on Traino here with this strategy, and I don't think that it's panned out the way that Blocker was hoping, between getting shuffled so far back at the beginning of the race and not having the drafting help on this second stint. And I think ultimately it's going to pay off in Traino's favor once again, just like we saw 14 weeks ago.
And I'll go back to saying that hindsight is everything, right? Hindsight's 2020, but would you have made that call to start on the blacks? Because the one thing that you could do, Andrew, is just, you can hear it, how much Blocker is having to save as well right now, but you could have waited until everyone else was on the grid before committing to starting on the black mark tires. I don't think that's what happened there, but ultimately it all snowballed from there.
Yeah, I don't mind the call of the black tires so much as it's just, if you're going to do the black tires, you have to really make sure that you have the rest of your strategy bang on perfect. And I think it was just seeing what happened with Blocker in those first few laps and him trying to fuel save and do what he's doing. Although that being said, he did a masterful job keeping Traino back at the end of that straight while still fuel saving. So this battle is not over yet with 4 to go, but it's just a matter of, I don't think that the circumstances in this race really worked out the way that Blocker was hoping.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It looked as though Blocker was covering the inside, then had to do his fuel saving. Brandon Traino maybe just being nice and not forcing the issue. He knows that things might work in his direction. What happened here for Brian's spot? So it's down into turn 3. And again, just a little bit too much on that curb, and that's going to be a big impact for the right side into the wall. For the race lead, both cars on the button, so as Adam Blocker being able to get to the number already. 4 to go, it will be 3 laps next time by, but Traino's already alongside. They'll be side by side. Blocker has that preferred inside line to be able to sweep and cut the nose off from Brandon Traino, and he does it once more. All the while, you'd think that maybe they're costing each other time, but Connor Harrington still 10 seconds back. Blocker on the button again. I've got to think that maybe he saved enough fuel and has also got that car maybe in map 2, map 3, because you can see he's just not taking off the corner as well as Brandon Traino seems to be doing.
Now, we'll keep in mind that Blocker as well is on, what is it, no, it's 21-lap-old red tires, so his tires can't be feeling very good as Traino gets into the back of Blocker through the S's there.
And he's lost the front left portion of his wing. Is that going to be the end of this race? Because at this fast course with plenty of high-speed turns, that might just be the difference preventing Brandon Traino, from being able to close up. Let's take a look at the replay and let's pick out what happens here. Traino's just got so much more speed. I don't think he realized that Blocker is still saving down into turn 5 there. Yeah,
that's what it looks like, because turn 5 is definitely not a place that you expect someone to try and pass you. You can't get alongside there, so I think Blocker has just been fuel saving there as one of his major spots of fuel saving.
Traino's off!
Oh no!
Is there more damage? It looks like he's coming straight down onto pit road. Well, they came to blows 1 week ago. They come to blows again. And Brandon Traino might just now drop himself outside of a top 10 finish. Drama, drama, drama. Traino is not a happy man right now. You can take a look at that face. He's already got the gloves off. Yep, I don't want to say what he said there, but you can read his lips. That was pretty clear.
Yeah, and I can definitely feel Traino's frustration, because you run down the guy in front of you so hard and you just don't anticipate where he's fuel saving, because you haven't had a chance to run behind him because you've come up on him so quickly. So yeah, it's one of those things where I can completely understand Traino's frustration there, but I don't think at the same time that there was any ill intent on Blocker's part either.
Traino has gone and back out, albeit in 7th position. I think actually he might be done. He's going to have to leave the track. Let's pick out what happens here. So again, Blocker goes defensive. And does Traino just... I think maybe it's just that lack of downforce that he's not got. White flag is out in the air, but let's try and pick apart what happens here, Andrew. Talk us through this.
Yeah, so Traino gets very close to the back of Blocker again through that apex, and I think it was just... He was just frustrated at that point and lost his head just a little bit, because, I mean, you saw he was never going to be able to make that corner at the speed that he was going through it, so I think he just lost his head a little bit there.
And this is what happened to him then, rolling himself out of pit lane. You could see that car is definitely not healthy, and I think he does the right thing, which is gets out of the way as soon as possible and prevents anyone else from being caught up in the lap around the track. But It is drama again here. This is one of the most exciting series that you can watch on iRacing. It is also the first race of every week. It means there's limited practice time. You don't know what your competition is going to bring to the table. Adam Blocker gambled on the strategy. He started on the primary tire. It didn't work out. He almost dropped outside of the top 10. He committed to a one-stop strategy. It wasn't without controversy, but Blocker wins once more here at the Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. There will be plenty of inquests after this race as to what happened between him and Brandon Traino.
What a drama-filled race we had. I didn't think that we would see anyone even be able to attempt that one-stop strategy, but Adam Blocker made it work with the fuel-saving race. Lots of controversy with the contact with Brandon Traino, but two other drivers in the top three here, Connor Harrington and David Porcelli. What drives from both of them? Harrington kept his nose clean all day, and David Porcelli with probably the drive of the race, coming through from starting well down in the order in 10th place to finish third.
Second consecutive podium for Porcelli. Things are building up quite nicely for him. Waiting for the final couple of cars to come across the line before we talk you through these race results. That one-stop strategy isn't going to be what everyone is talking about, unfortunately, as Adam Blocker doesn't even have enough fuel to make his way in towards victory lane. So 49 laps later, it ends in drama to the line. It's Adam Blocker that's on top. Brandon Traino fought him hard, but contact between the two of them ended Brandon Traino's race. Connor Harrington will scoop up the pieces and finish in second position. David Porcelli, his second consecutive podium, the New Jersey native, really starting to make headways into the big teams running by himself. Mitchell Welker in the AAIR number 7 car brings that car home in fourth. Give a shout out to Porcelli, by the way, 7 positions gained after starting on the edge of the top 10. Don't think he would have expected things to go that way. Rashad Craig down in 5th with Wilson Nato dropping back a couple to finish in 6th. Alexander Van der Sande, well, after having an issue on lap number 1, still managed to make his way up into the top 10. He finishes 7th with Justin Gable, David Trask, and David Henger, the top 10. David Henger, one of the biggest movers, 8 positions gained for him, but 10 positions gained for Chris Wilhite in the Indy Alliance number 20. He finishes in 11th. Trevor Greenfield in 12th with BC Voigt and David Graybill behind them. Brandon Traino, then the final car, 1 lap down, scored in 15th position for the Apex Racing team with I5G number 6. Isaac Snyder in 16th with Timothy Reed 17th, Antonio Nucris 18th, Adam Crane 19th, Richard Holt complete the top 20. Just 4 more cars. Brian Spots, Lorenzo Bonder, Alessandro Sidi and Jacob Oster. Sidi and Jacob Oster not actually classified there because they did not use both compounds of tires, and as a result, with that new rule change, it changes how things will get classified. So an interesting race, and one that Adam Blocker managed to find a way on through. First question for your race winner, Adam, is, was it always planned to do the one-stop strategy?
No. Sorry, had some issues there. No, it wasn't always the plan. I initially was planning on doing a 2-stop, but I saw the weather was cold, so it meant the reds could last. And then I decided to start on blacks, which was probably the wrong decision because I lost a bunch of track positions straight away, and there was nothing I could do to defend because they were just so fast. So once I lost a few spots, I'm like, okay, I'm not too far behind the fuel number, I can hit it. And so I just started hitting it, and I lost too much time in the first stunt because I got caught kind of awkwardly fighting Adam Crane and David Porcelli. I wasn't really trying to fight them, but we were kind of just getting in each other's way, and I lost a lot of extra time. And I think, without that, I could have, beat Traino without having to defend. But yeah, in the end, it was super close between the two strategies, and kind of an interesting finish.
Talk to us about then that moment with Brandon Traino through the S's into turn 5. From what I could see, it looks like you were trying to save some fuel, and Traino just didn't realize that you were still saving hard because you were burning the push-to-passes. Is that what you saw from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody goes and looks at my onboard, I was lifting there from lap 5 of the race, doing the same thing in that corner every time. And I know it's a weird place to lift, and I know that Brandon hadn't really been behind me for that many laps, so he might not have known that, so I understand why it happened. But like from my perspective, like I have to hit the fuel number, and I'm in front, he's not going to pass me into that corner, so I have a right to go whatever speed I want to go. So I lifted, and he hit the back of me, and I mean, I don't, I'm sorry for that, but I don't really know what else I could have done different, so.
Well, it leads me into my follow-up question, which was how close were you on the fuel at that point in time? Because you were using the push bus, I guess because you had to, but that burns a little bit more fuel as well.
Yeah, so I was a little bit ahead on my number, so I could afford to. So like once the incident happened, I was super conservative on fuel and made it, so I had like 0.3 left. So I think in those laps, what I was trying to do was make sure I saved, maybe even lift a little bit more in the section of the track where you can't pass. So into turn 1, into turn 2, into turn 5. And then anytime he didn't have a run. And then, besides that, you had to use push to pass to try to defend, right? I saw the gap to Connor was quite big, so if he got by me, I was just going to go mega fuel save if I was slightly behind and make the number, so.
Well, congratulations, Adam. As always, Monday nights prove to be the most fascinating of nights. We'll see you, hopefully, in 7 days' time for one of our first short tracks in a while. We go racing at Phoenix.
Yeah, I just want to thank the guys at Powerslide for the great work on the setup, and everybody for the great race. Nice to see a big turnout for Road Atlanta, and see you guys next time out.
Road Atlanta, one of the most underrated tracks in an IndyCar. Connor Harrington joins us now. Rather lonely finish to the end there, Connor, but qualifying went quite well. First time for you back on a Monday in a while, and from there you just looked forward and closed your way onto Traino's rear wing at the start. What happened from there from your perspective?
Yeah, always great to be back on a Monday night after a little hiatus. Finally got my hand all redone and fixed up, so it's always good to be back. Finally able to come back. I don't know. Honestly, I light fueled the car for the first stint. So if I'd gotten by Traino, who knows? But just in Traino's dirty air, I just roasted the fronts off, and from there it just kind of tumbled away. And then having to make a couple adjustments in the pit stops, just cost me too much time on pit road, and I just lost touch with them. And from there, we were just trying to survive and navigate lap traffic and get ourselves a good finish. David behind me was pretty quick there at the end, so glad to get home with P2.
How do you like this new change where you are now required in these official races to run both compounds of tires?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great change, obviously. It makes real life. It throws a whole bunch of different strategy options into the window, especially when you get these two stop strategies, and you can make a lot of things happen. The only thing we need now is, live safety cars for when there's a big accident. And, it'll be even more fun and more chaotic. This new tire, I've been good on it, but just like on the older tire, I just haven't figured it out yet. And we're getting there and we're figuring it out, but we just don't have the pace of the top guys when we wear the tire out. But we'll get there, I think, eventually.
Well, Lionheart goes to Long Beach. There's no setup considerations or worries there. What are you expecting in the first street course race of the season?
Just chaos, just absolute madness. It was pretty crazy there last year. With the new tire, you're going to be able to slide it around a lot more. But it's a street circuit, and there's going to be 40-something cars out there. So who knows what we're going to get when we go down to turn 1 there. I'm just hoping that we get a good qualifying spot. We can just settle in, just get a good pace going, and work the strategy from there.
Congratulations, Connor. Great to have you back on a Monday night.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Final interview on the podium. It's David Porcelli. 2 podiums in a row, David. You're really starting to bring it to the big teams working, as far as I know, all by yourself.
Yes, that is correct.
How difficult is it for you? I mean, the teams, have the advantage of being able to throw bodies at setups and things like that. They've got the added, benefit of having telemetry to compare. What's it like working by yourself?
Well, it's a lot. I think I have to do quite a bit in order to overcome the deficit. I do have the benefit of a couple of people that I work with. We just don't call ourselves a team. We don't run the same races as each other, but we, share our thoughts on setup and things like that. And that's enough for me to build a quick enough set to compete. And in terms of the racecraft and self self-adjustment. I just really am constantly analyzing my own telemetry, running laps, and figuring out the best way through each corner. So yeah, there is an advantage to having a team, but I do everything I can to overcome it.
I mean, we've got a great schedule this season. It's also a rather eclectic schedule. You've got the regular IndyCar tracks, but you've got the likes of Road Atlanta, you've got the Nordschleife in the mix as well. What are the tracks that you're really looking forward to for the rest of these 10 weeks in the championship?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the Nordschleife. This was one of the tracks I was looking forward to. I live in Jersey, but if I had a home racetrack, it would be Road Atlanta. I have the most laps there. So it translates on the sim. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the season. I'm just really humbled to be leading the points at this moment and to be bringing the fight to the big teams. I'm really grateful for the competition that's provided in this league, in this series. It's really enabled me to step up my game and perfect my craft as a driver. So I just want to thank all the other competitors.
Feels like a league at sometimes. You got the regulars, you get hard but fair racing. Good luck for the rest of the season. One of the few drivers that brings real-life experience to the sim as well. Going better and better for you, David. Looking forward to seeing you in a week's time at Phoenix.
Thanks so much, guys.
That's David Porcelli. That will wrap up our podium interviews. And let's look forward, Andrew. We got Phoenix next time out. It's a short track, but it's, especially in an IndyCar, really fast. And one that, we say this all the time, but being on top of your tools is the key to being consistent here.
Yes, Phoenix, particularly the new version of Phoenix, which is the one that we're going to, it's one of those tracks where you just need to be on top of all aspects of your game. It's very difficult to make a move, but when the move happens, you need to make sure that you almost immediately adjust your tools in order to rebalance the car, make sure that you're just on the limit without going over it throughout the whole course of the stint. It's a very challenging track from a driver's perspective, and it's one that will definitely make the cream rise to the top, I think, and it should be a fantastic race next week.
Got a great schedule up ahead of us. 2 rounds are done, still 10 left to go. There's a look at it. 150 laps at Phoenix. Same time, same place, March 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Join us here on RaceSpotTV as we go into the Arizona desert. From there, we go to the streets of Long Beach, Auto Club Speedway for some super speedway action before heading to the Green Hell for what is bound to be one of the most popular races we have this season. We'll see some new faces to show forth as well. For now, though, it is time to say goodbye. More drama here on a Monday. It seems like every time you tune in to this iRacing IndyCar Open Series live on RaceSpotTV, there's someone showing up, there's drama to be had, or there's some strategy playing itself out. This race had it all, though, but for now, it is time to wave you goodbye. More IndyCar action coming up, though, in just about half an hour's time. Stay here on RaceSpotTV as the Lionheart Speedway Series takes the DW12s over to the Legacy Texas Motor Speedway. This Wednesday, the Lionheart IndyCar Series gets itself going for round 2 on the streets of Long Beach. A little bit of a preview of what's ahead of us here on Monday in a couple of weeks' time. For now, though, on behalf of the entire team at RaceSpotTV, for Dougie Beard providing our cameras and live looks at everything out on track, for ATVO powering our timing and graphics, for our co-commentary team of Andrew Kinsella and Lorenzo Bonder feeding us some information before the race. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, signing off for now. So much fun we had here at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. We'll do it again from Phoenix in 7 days' time. For now, though, so long and goodbye.